The newcomers, challenged Maya Chen, pressed her palm against the cool metal of the transport shuttle's window, watching as the massive space station grew larger before her eyes. Nexus Academy stretched across the void like a gleaming city among the stars, its crystalline towers and rotating rings catching the light of 3 different suns. This was it, the most prestigious interspecies educational institution in the known galaxy, and somehow she had earned a place here. The shuttle docked with a gentle tremor that barely disturbed the other passengers. Maya gathered her simple belongings, noting how her single worn duffel bag contrasted sharply with the ornate containers and biopods carried by her fellow students. As the airlock hissed open, she took her first breath of recycled station air, tasting the strange metallic tang that came from housing 47 different species under one roof. The arrival bay was a marvel of engineering and chaos. Students of every conceivable shape and size moved through the vast space, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, warbles, harmonics, and traditional speech. Towering Vulcan students with their rocky, mineral-based skin trudged past delicate Silhari, whose butterfly-like wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. 6-armed hexapods juggled multiple data tablets, while serpentine nagas coiled elegantly through the crowd, their scales reflecting the station's artificial lighting. Maya felt incredibly small and plain by comparison. At 17, she was average height for a human, but dwarfed by most of the alien students around her. Her straight black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her dark eyes took in everything with quiet observation. She wore the standard academy uniform, an adaptive fabric that adjusted to each species' needs, but on her human frame, it looked unremarkable compared to the way it transformed for other students. She followed the flow of students through a series of corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls displayed holographic information in hundreds of languages, cycling through species-specific data about dormitory assignments, class schedules, and academy rules. Maya's translator implant worked overtime, processing the constant stream of alien chatter around her. Her first stop was the dormitory wing assigned to carbon-based life forms. The housing coordinator, a pleasant Illyri with crystalline features, handed her an access card and pointed her toward Section 7. Maya's room was small but comfortable, with environmental controls that could accommodate her human needs. Her roommate hadn't arrived yet, which gave her time to unpack and collect her thoughts. As she arranged her few possessions, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here. She came from a small human colony on the edge of civilized space, where her grandmother had raised her after her parents died in a mining accident. Her grandmother, Li Chen, was a woman of few words but deep wisdom, a former engineer who had helped build some of the first human settlements in alien space. Strength isn't about how loud you shout or how hard you hit, her grandmother had always said. True strength is like water. It finds its way through any obstacle, quietly and persistently. Maya had excelled in her studies through this quiet persistence. While other students sought attention and praise, she had focused on learning, on understanding, on growing stronger in ways that couldn't be measured by standard tests. Her application to Nexus Academy had been a long shot. Humans made up less than 1% of the student body, but her exceptional grades in xenobiology, interspecies psychology, and adaptive problem-solving had somehow earned her a place. The first few days passed in a blur of orientation sessions and placement tests. Maya attended her classes diligently, taking careful notes and speaking only when directly addressed. She quickly learned the unspoken hierarchy of the academy. At the top were species known for their physical prowess or advanced technology. The Thrakkari warriors, the Zelanti technomancers, the ancient Morduk philosophers. Humans, as one of the youngest spacefaring species, ranked near the bottom in most students' minds. It was on her 5th day that Maya first encountered Vexgoroth and his followers. She had been sitting alone in the central cafeteria, a massive, dome-shaped space that could accommodate the dietary needs of dozens of different species. The food stations offered everything from liquid nutrient solutions to live prey for predatory species. Maya had selected a simple protein synthesis meal and found a quiet corner table where she could eat while reviewing her xenarchaeology notes. She became aware of the approaching group before she saw them. The cafeteria's normal buzz of conversation seemed to dim as other students noticed the newcomers and either moved away or fell silent. Maya looked up to see an imposing figure striding toward her table, flanked by 4 other students who radiated an aura of casual menace. Vexgoroth was a prime example of Thrakkari physiology, 7 feet tall with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like black armor. His people were warrior insects from a harsh desert world where only the strongest survived to reproduce. 2 secondary arms jutted from his torso, currently folded across his chest, while his primary arms ended in hands, capable of crushing steel. His compound eyes fixed on Maya with an expression of amused disdain. Well, well, Vex clicked, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic quality of his species. What do we have here? A little human, all alone. His followers laughed, a mix of species that included Torgak, the bruiser, a massive rock-skinned Vulcan whose people moved mountains with their bare hands, Sishita, a Naga whose hypnotic abilities were legendary, Zephyr, a Gesian whose people could manipulate gravity, and Spike, a Crystallian who could harden his body to diamond-like density. Maya looked up from her notes, meeting Vex's gaze calmly. "I'm studying," she said simply, her voice quiet but clear. "Studying." Vex's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. "How adorable. Tell me, little human, what exactly are you studying? How to be weak, how to be slow, how to be completely useless in any real situation." The surrounding tables had gone completely quiet now. Other students watched with a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity. Everyone knew Vex's reputation. He was the Academy's unofficial enforcer, a student whose family held significant political power in the Galactic Council. His word carried weight, and his disapproval could make life very difficult for anyone who crossed him. Maya closed her tablet carefully and looked at each of Vex's followers in turn before returning her attention to their leader. "I'm studying the Battle of Kepler Station," she said evenly. "It's fascinating how a small force of humans held off an entire Thrakkari war fleet for 3 weeks, using nothing but clever tactics and determination." The silence in the cafeteria became absolute. Several students actually gasped at Maya's audacity. Mentioning that particular battle to a Thrakkari was like slapping them across the face. It was one of the few military defeats in their proud warrior history, and it had been inflicted by supposedly inferior humans. Vex's exoskeleton darkened with rage, a natural response that indicated he was preparing for combat. His secondary arms unfolded from his chest, while his primary hands clenched into fists. "You dare," he hissed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You dare mention that coward's victory." Humans hiding behind their technology like frightened children. Maya remained seated, her expression unchanged. "Is that what your people call it?" Because the tactical analysis I'm reading suggests it was one of the most brilliant defensive campaigns in recent galactic history. Small numbers, limited resources, but perfect understanding of environmental advantages and enemy psychology. For a moment, it looked like Vex might attack her right there in the cafeteria. His compound eyes blazed with fury, and several students scrambled to get out of potential reach. But then, surprisingly, he began to laugh, a harsh, clicking sound that sent chills through anyone who heard it. "You have spirit, little human. I'll give you that." He leaned down, bringing his face closer to hers. "But spirit means nothing without strength to back it up. You want to talk about battles and tactics? Fine. Let's see how well you understand. Then, when you're actually tested." Maya's heart began beating faster, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you mean?" "The proving trials," Vex announced, his voice carrying clearly through the silent cafeteria, ancient tradition of this academy. Any student can challenge another to prove their worth through combat, intellect, and will. The trials test everything: mental fortitude, physical capability, strategic thinking. Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. The proving trials were legendary at Nexus Academy, but they were rarely invoked. Most students were too smart to risk the potential consequences, and the trials themselves were notoriously difficult. They had been designed centuries ago when the Academy was founded, created to test the absolute limits of what different species could achieve. "I challenge you." "Maya Chen of Earth," Vex continued formally. 3 trials, traditional format, witnessed by the student body, unless, of course, you'd prefer to admit that humans are as weak as everyone says and withdraw from the Academy in shame. The trap was perfectly laid. If Maya refused, she would be branded a coward and would likely face constant harassment until she was forced to leave. If she accepted, she would be facing trials designed for alien physiology and psychology with no real chance of success. Either way, Vex achieved his goal of putting the uppity human in her place. Maya sat quietly for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities. She thought of her grandmother's words about water finding its way through obstacles. She thought about the human defenders at Kepler Station, outnumbered and outgunned but refusing to surrender. She thought about every quiet hour she had spent studying, preparing, growing stronger in ways that couldn't be seen. Finally, she stood up, her slight frame dwarfed by Vex's imposing presence. "I accept your challenge," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the silent cafeteria. Vex's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "Excellent. The trials will be held tomorrow at sunset, in the central arena. Traditional format, mental fortitude, physical endurance, strategic combat. I do hope you're prepared to fail spectacularly in front of the entire Academy." As Vex and his followers swaggered away, the cafeteria slowly returned to life. Students whispered excitedly among themselves, already placing bets on how quickly the human would be defeated. Some looked at Maya with pity, others with contempt, and a few with what might have been respect for her courage. However misguided it might be, Maya gathered her things and walked calmly toward the exit, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. Only when she reached the privacy of her dormitory room did she allow herself to sink into her chair, her hands trembling slightly as the magnitude of what she had just agreed to hit her. She had 24 hours to prepare for trials that had broken students from species far stronger and more advanced than humans. 24 hours to find a way to prove that quiet strength could triumph over arrogant power. 24 hours to either validate everything she believed about human potential, or fail spectacularly in front of the entire academy. But as she sat in her small room, surrounded by her grandmother's teachings and her own quiet determination, Maya Chen began to smile. Vexgorath had made one crucial mistake. He had assumed that because humans were young and physically unremarkable, they were weak. Tomorrow she would show him just how wrong he was. Asterisk, the trials and revelation word of the challenge spread through Nexus Academy like wildfire. By morning, students were placing bets on how quickly Maya would be defeated, with the most optimistic estimates giving her 10 minutes across all 3 trials. The academic staff tried to maintain their usual professional demeanor, but even they couldn't hide their curiosity about the unprecedented matchup. Maya spent her preparation time in the Academy's archives, studying every recording of previous proving trials she could access. The mental fortitude trial involved navigating a psychic maze created by the Academy's telepathic council, a test designed to break the mind through fear, doubt, and overwhelming sensory input. Physical endurance was an adaptive obstacle course that adjusted to each participant's species, pushing them beyond their natural limits. Strategic combat was exactly what it sounded like, a battle of wits and tactics against increasingly difficult scenarios. She also spent time in quiet meditation, practicing the breathing techniques her grandmother had taught her. The mind is like still water, Li Chen had always said. When it's calm, it reflects everything clearly. When it's disturbed, it shows nothing but chaos. As sunset approached, Maya made her way to the central arena. The massive amphitheater was packed with students from every species, their excited chatter creating a cacophony of sounds that the arena's translation systems struggled to process. She could feel thousands of eyes on her as she walked onto the arena floor, her simple academy uniform a stark contrast to Vex's ceremonial warrior gear. Vexgorath stood at the center of the arena like a dark monument to predatory evolution. His chitinous armor had been polished to a mirror shine, and traditional Throkery war paint covered his mandibles in intricate patterns. His followers clustered nearby, already celebrating what they saw as inevitable victory. Academy Proctor Velta, an ancient Mordark whose species served as neutral arbiters throughout the galaxy, raised a crystalline staff for silence. His voice, enhanced by psionic amplifiers, reached every corner of the arena. "We are gathered to witness the ancient rite of proving trials," Velta intoned. Challenger Vexgorath of Throkar Prime faces challenged Maya Chen of Earth in 3 trials of worthiness. Let it be known that these trials will test the absolute limits of both participants, and all outcomes must be accepted with honor. The first trial began immediately. A massive holographic construct materialized in the center of the arena, a complex, 3-dimensional maze that seemed to shift and writhe like a living thing. The mental fortitude trial was designed to test a being's psychological resilience by subjecting them to their deepest fears and most painful memories, while requiring them to navigate an increasingly complex mental landscape. Vex entered first, his confidence radiating through his posture. For his species, mental strength was measured by the ability to maintain focus during extreme physical stress. The maze would attack him with scenarios designed to trigger the fight or flight responses that could override logical thinking. Maya watched through the external monitors as Vex battled through the maze's challenges. Holographic enemies materialized around him, ancient predators from Throkery mythology, scenes of his people's greatest military defeats, personal fears about inadequacy and failure, He powered through with brute mental force, his warrior's training allowing him to compartmentalize fear and pain. His time was impressive, 47 minutes to reach the center, placing him in the top 10% of all Academy records. Then, it was Maya's turn as she approached the maze's entry point. Maya closed her eyes and began the breathing exercises her grandmother had taught her. She let her mind become still water, reflecting everything without being disturbed by it. When she opened her eyes, her expression was serene. The maze attacked immediately. Maya found herself reliving her parents' death, watching helplessly as their mining shuttle exploded in a cascade of debris and flame. The holographic recreation was perfect, down to the smell of burning metal and the sound of her own childhood screams. But instead of being overwhelmed, Maya observed the memory like watching a film. The pain was real, but it was also the past. She acknowledged it, accepted it, and moved forward through the maze. The scenarios became increasingly personal and terrifying. She faced projections of her own inadequacy, visions of failure at the Academy, nightmares about being rejected by the galactic community for her humanity. Each fear was met with the same calm acceptance. Maya didn't fight the maze's attacks. She flowed around them like water around stones. The watching crowd grew quieter as Maya's progress became apparent. She wasn't battling through the maze like Vex had. She was dancing through it, finding paths that seemed impossible, solving puzzles that had stumped students for decades. 30-8 minutes. Maya emerged from the maze's center looking tired but composed, having beaten Vex's time by nearly 10 minutes. The arena buzzed with confused whispers. How had a human, a species known for emotional instability, outperformed a Thrakari warrior? In mental fortitude, the physical endurance trial was next. The arena floor transformed into an obstacle course that defied physics. Walls that shifted between solid and liquid. Gravity fields that changed direction without warning. Passages that required specific biological adaptations to navigate. For his species, the course generated challenges requiring raw strength and predatory instincts. Vex attacked each obstacle with overwhelming force, his exoskeleton protecting him from impacts that would have shattered most beings. He completed the course in 32 minutes, leaving gouges in metal walls and having literally punched through. Several barriers Maya approached the same course, but the adaptive system generated entirely different challenges for human physiology. Where Vex had faced brute force obstacles, Maya encountered puzzles requiring flexibility, balance, and creative problem-solving. She slipped through passages too narrow for larger species, used momentum and leverage to overcome barriers designed for beings with greater raw strength, and found hidden shortcuts that rewarded careful observation over direct assault. Her small size and human adaptability turned every apparent disadvantage into a strength. Most remarkably, she began to solve obstacles in ways the designers hadn't anticipated. When faced with a wall too high to climb, she used the debris from previous competitors to build steps. When confronted with a gravity field that sent most beings tumbling, she used her understanding of physics to predict the field's patterns and dance through them. 20-8 minutes. Maya had beaten Vex again, and this time the crowd's whispers carried a different tone. Some students were beginning to look at the quiet human girl with something approaching respect. Vex's confidence was visibly shaken. His compound eyes focused on Maya with new intensity, seeing her for the first time as an actual opponent rather than an amusing diversion. The final trial was strategic combat, not physical fighting, but a complex tactical simulation where participants commanded virtual forces against increasingly difficult scenarios. It was considered the ultimate test of leadership and strategic thinking. The simulation placed both participants in command of identical forces facing an overwhelming enemy invasion. Success was measured not by total victory, which was impossible, but by how long forces could be maintained and how many objectives could be achieved before inevitable defeat. Vex's strategy reflected his species: military doctrine, aggressive assaults, overwhelming firepower, and the assumption that superior force would eventually triumph. His tactical display showed classic Thrakari battle formations, with heavy emphasis on frontal assaults and intimidating displays of strength. He lasted 18 minutes before his forces were overwhelmed. Having achieved 3 of 7 strategic objectives, Maya's approach was entirely different. She studied the enemy patterns for several minutes before making her first move, ignoring the crowd's restless murmurs about her apparent hesitation. When she finally began deploying her forces, her strategy was unlike anything the Academy had seen before. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, Maya used hit-and-run tactics. She sacrificed territory to buy time, led enemy forces into carefully prepared ambushes, and used the simulation's environmental factors in ways that surprised even the proctor. Her forces were always outnumbered, but they were never where the enemy expected them to be. She turned the simulation's own complexity against itself, using the advanced AI's predictive algorithms to anticipate enemy movements and stay one step ahead. When direct confrontation was unavoidable, she chose the time and place, ensuring maximum advantage for her smaller forces. 20-7 minutes. 5 of 7 objectives achieved. Maya had not only beaten Vex's time, but had set a new Academy record for the strategic combat trial. The arena was completely silent as Proctor Veltar announced the results. 3 trials, 3 victories for the human girl who had been dismissed as weak and irrelevant. Just 24 hours earlier, Vex stared at Maya for a long moment, his warrior's pride warring with a growing understanding of what he had witnessed. Finally, he stepped forward and performed the traditional Thrakari gesture of respect, a complex movement that involved all 4 arms and represented acknowledgement of a superior opponent. "I was wrong," he said, his harmonic voice carrying clearly through the silent arena. "I saw your size and assumed weakness. I saw your quiet nature and assumed cowardice. I saw your species and assumed inferiority." He paused, his compound eyes meeting Maya's dark ones. "You have shown me that strength comes in forms I never understood. You have earned not just victory, but respect." Maya stepped forward and bowed, formally, her response reflecting the diplomatic protocols her grandmother had made her study. "You honored me with this challenge, Vexgoroth. Through it, we have both learned something valuable about strength and assumption." The crowd erupted. Students who had been placing bets against Maya now cheered her name. The few humans in the Academy's student body looked at her with something approaching awe, while students from other species began to see humanity in an entirely new light. In the days that followed, Maya's life at Nexus Academy transformed completely. Students who had previously ignored her now sought her out for study groups and strategic gaming sessions. Her tactical thinking became legendary among the student body, and several professors began incorporating her solutions to classic problems into their curricula. Vexgoroth became an unexpected ally, his warrior's code demanding that he support those who had proven themselves in honorable combats. His followers, seeing their leaders change in attitude, began to treat Maya with the respect due to a proven warrior. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the Academy's human students saw themselves. Maya had proven that humanity's strengths, adaptability, creativity, persistence, and the ability to find unconventional solutions were not weaknesses to be hidden, but advantages to be celebrated. Years later, when Maya had graduated and was serving as a diplomatic attaché, helping to resolve interspecies conflicts, she would still remember her first week at Nexus Academy, not because of the trials themselves, but because of what they had taught her about the power of quiet strength, and the importance of never judging others by their appearance or assumptions. Vex Korith, now a respected military strategist, would often tell young warriors about the day a small human girl taught him that true strength comes not from the ability to overcome obstacles through force, but from the wisdom to find a better way around them. And in the archives of Nexus Academy, Maya's trial recordings became required viewing for new students, a perfect example of how the galaxy's greatest strength lay not in the power of any single species, but in the incredible diversity of approaches that different minds could bring to solving the same problem. The quiet human girl had indeed made them pay, not through violence or revenge, but by forcing them to confront their own assumptions about strength, intelligence, and what it truly meant to be worthy of respect in a galaxy full of remarkable beings. Maya Chen had proven that sometimes the most profound victories come not from the loudest voice or the strongest arm, but from the steady determination of someone who refuses to be defined by others' expectations. Asterisk.